Hello BookTube. For this video, you're just going to get me, the Becky half of the Bookish Bryants, and as you can see, I've moved over. I've taken over Scott's throne. Look at that back. That's great. This is my latest video on the Belgariadpocalypse readathon, and it's a little late, but it's better late than never. I like to think, usually when I'm making excuses for myself, but still. Last month we read The Queen of Sorcery by David Eddings. This is book 2 of the Belgariad. We've talked about this, or I've talked about this a lot over the last couple of months. And the Belgariad has been I think as Steve likes to put it, it's been a formative book for a lot of readers. If you're talking to a good fantasy and sci-fi reader, someone who's been reading for years, chances are they've read this. It's not the best fantasy novel ever written. Of course it's not. But it's still one of the most, well, series anyway, it's still one of the most fun series that's ever been released, I think. And I read it first time when I was like 13 years old, and I figured it'd be a different read for me now, seeing as how I'm much older. But surprisingly, it's not that much different. I'm still enjoying it as much as I did then. Hold on. And but I am discovering a lot of it has some problems socially and storyline wise. The the books are kind of a feminist nightmare if you look at them from a feminist point of view. In this book, the females, the women, you're either Polgara or you're everyone else. Polgara is one of the main group of main characters. She's the woman. I don't count Sinedra as a woman, really. She's a child. But Polgara is a thousands of years old sorceress, and she's amazing. She's she's stately, she's brilliant, she's powerful. And all of the other women in this book, they're either trod upon, mousy, or they're horrible. Or their children. So, I guess it's kind of a feminist nightmare, but you tend to get past that because who was I think it was Angie, one of the ladies in the readathon mentioned that a lot of horror. I'm sorry, I'm still horror mayhem. A lot of fantasy novels are based on sort of medieval England and the castles and the idea of sorcery and the social structure. And that's very much the case here. You've got kings and you've got barons and you've got old gods and sorceresses and stuff like that. So it's very Arthurian-esque. But so it makes sense that the women are portrayed the way they are, because women were in medieval times. Women were property, pretty much, means to an end, in a lot of cases. So it makes sense to the story. Let's see. The Queen of Sorcery is the second book in the series, and it's sort of I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. It's transitive. It's passing through. It's a step on the road that these people are taking. The whole storyline is Garion. He's a 15 or 16-year-old boy now. I can't remember. He's a teenager. Is being accompanied by his aunt and his grandfather, and a whole host of other characters to find this orb that's from from legend, that's supposed to be extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily important. And the whole story revolves around around Garion being completely clueless. He has no idea what's going on. He's got the vague idea that they're looking for something important, and it's supposed to be called an orb of some sort, but he's not really sure what's happening. And everything that he knows, he learns through through eavesdropping and hint dropping. No one will tell him anything. He's very obviously much more than what he thinks he is. He's, as far as he knows, he is a farm boy from the middle of nowhere with a and for years he thought his aunt was just normal, regular, everyday person. Turns out she is this amazing sorceress who is just millennia old. And it's messing with Garion's mind, let me tell you. Of course, he's a teenager. Change does not agree with him in the first place. And now he's learning that his world is not what he thinks it is. He's being placed in danger. He's having to do things he really doesn't want to do. And he doesn't understand why, because no one will tell him anything. But he's surrounded by these great, great characters that all have their own problems, and they're all really, really loyal to Gary, to the quest that they're all on. And with this book, it gave us a much deeper understanding of a couple of the characters. For one, it's Mandaralin. He's sort of a paladin-like character. He is this white knight, all bravery and honor and chivalry sort of dude. And I remember the first time I read this, Mandaralin, I hated his character. I thought he was just a rabid blowhard that I just could not suffer. But now, as a much older individual, I sort of understand where he's coming from. He's a product of his upbringing, of his his belief system, of his social standing, and you know, there's a scene in this that's utterly heartbreaking. Mandaralin is in love with a very married woman, and they're both such honorable people. They can't and never will do anything about it, and it's heartbreaking. And I have a much deeper respect for Mandaralin because he's actually such a good person. And I remember the first time I read this series, I sympathized with Garion much more. Right now, I want to smack him. He he's kind of bratty. he's not growing up as fast as he really needs to, and it's making for kind of an irritating character right now, but that's okay. I guess he's a little Mary Jane-ish. He's sort of like Harry Potter. He's surrounded by all these bright, vibrant characters. They're such impressive people, and here he is, just sort of bleeding into the woodwork. But the Queen of Sorcery, this book, we got a much bigger hint of what Garion is capable of, because apparently Garion is a lot more capable. Well, is capable of a lot more than he's ever been given credit for, and he's not prepared for it. Not at all. Things happen to Garion in this book that just throw him for a loop, and he can't handle it at all. And the next book, it's The Magicians Gambit, which I'm on chapter 4 so far, is more about Sinedra. She's a dryad character who's, knowing what I know about her, from having read this book in the next series, I find her hilarious in this. I thought she was such a brat the first time I read it. Such a brat. And now she's still a brat, but she's an understandable brat. And she's a much more enjoyable brat because I know where she's headed, which kind of makes the reread fun, more fun. But yeah, we in the Queen of Sorcery, we've learned that there's something really, really important about Garion. And there's different aspects to Garion that we weren't aware of, and I think and they're going to be much more fleshed out in this book with the horrible covers, but they're fun. Why not? So yeah, I'm enjoying the reread of the Belgariad. I was afraid that I would get through the first book and be completely bored because I've read all this before. I'm not much of a rereader, never have been, because there's just no surprise left. But because there's been pretty close to 30 years between now and the last time I read the book, there's a lot that I don't remember, and it's making it for a very fun read for me, because I about half of the Queen of Sorcery was perfectly new. I didn't remember any of it. But I think in this book, there's a scene coming up that I think, if I remember correctly, it's in this book, that I cannot wait to experience again. And I'll have to let you know on the next video if I'm correct. Because I want to be Polgara when I grow up. She's an amazing character. She's so much fun to read about, even though she's kind of bitchy. I'm just saying. But she's allowed to be. She's thousands upon thousands of years old. I mean, I'd be bitchy too. But that's just my take. So yeah, we're only in the third book. We're reading it for the entire month of May. If you still feel like joining and you haven't read the first book, you got the entire month of May to read 3 very quick reads. They're not exactly thick books. And the thing about these books is they go fast. You start reading and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to read one more chapter. And at the end of this chapter, you're like, I just need another chapter. And by the time you're done with your little reading session, you've read 8 chapters. That happens to me a lot. I keep telling myself I'm going to read 1 chapter a day, and I'll stick to it. And that way I'll read the entire book over the entire month of May. And yeah, that's not how it worked. I read 4 chapters the other day, and now it's like, yeah, nope, just going to have to read like 5 or 6 chapters in a sitting, force myself to stop, and then read some horror books for Horror Mayhem. That's about the best I can do. I have to force myself to stop reading these. They're sort of young adultish. They're very obviously written in a very simple manner, so they're easy to understand, easy to follow, and very quick to get through. So yeah, if you want to join us, let me know. I'll add you to the Voxer. We're a great group of people, and about half of us are doing Horror Mayhem at the same time, because Scott and I are apparently sadistic, and we we decided we're going to have this great horror readathon while I'm doing the Belgariad. I'm insane, but that's okay. I'm having a great time in both reading events. So, but yeah, that's all for this video. I'll see you again at the end of the month, and we'll see what happened in the Magicians Gambit. Your books are calling. Go read.